Hello Year 4, today is Monday the 1st of March and today we are going to be looking at our comprehension workbook, so the Year 4 comprehension workbook, and your learning question is, can I use inference when answering questions about a text? So today you're going to need your Book 2 workbook and you're looking at pages 12 to 13, which is titled Armoured Dinosaurs. So just as a warm-up, I'm going to introduce some new vocab today, and I want you to find the definition of the word extinct. So what do I mean by the word extinct? Can you think of any animals or creatures that are extinct? Okay, just get that brain going. You might need to do a little bit of research for your warm-up today. So I've got some new vocab. Hopefully you've already found out what the word extinct means, but if you haven't, it means that something is no longer in existence, so it doesn't exist anymore. There aren't any more of that kind or that type on Earth. We've got the word intimidated, so it means to frighten or scare someone. And then my last word that I picked out, because I thought it was one that you might struggle with, is fending. And that means to look after oneself, so to look after yourself without having any help or support. So it's just basically standing up for yourself or looking after yourself without having anyone to come and help. Okay, so today's text is a non-fiction extract and it focuses on dinosaurs with body armour and how they use that body armour to protect themselves. Okay, so we're going to be looking at two dinosaurs in particular, and it is a non-fiction extract, so it has been taken out of another book, and I just want you to try your best, read through a couple of times just to make the sense of some of the vocab, because some of the vocabulary in there is a little bit tricky, but the text actually tells you about what those words mean. So if you are stuck, please take your time to reread over where it explains in the text what those different words mean, okay? So hopefully you will read through your text at least twice and then you will move on to your questions. So again, I've only picked out a couple of different questions to support you on for your comprehension, just because we've been doing it for 7 weeks now and you're doing a great job of it. Okay, so we're on week 8 and I just think you're fantastic at doing your comprehension work. You're trying your best and you're doing really well. So question 1, why do you think fighting a dinosaur with body armour wasn't a task for the faint-hearted in line 7? Now the first thing that I would do here is look up what the word faint-hearted means, okay? And it says there that it's an adjective and it means to lack courage or to be timid. And it says there similar words: timid, nervous, scared, easily frightened, okay? So it's basically saying, why isn't fighting a dinosaur with body armour a job for someone who is scared, who is nervous? Why? Why might that be? Okay, so reread line 7. Use your knowledge that you've just been given about the phrase faint-hearted and have a go at answering it on your own. Okay, so moving on to question 3. You've got to reread lines 10 to 20 and then you've got to give 2 ways that the body armour of an ankylosaurus and the body armour of a stegosaurus was similar. So they want you to look at things that are the same in these animals. So again, I've broken it down into steps for you so you know how to approach this question. Step 1 would be to reread the lines 10 to 20 and then pick out the keywords that compare the ankylosaurus and the stegosaurus. Okay, so what words compare those two dinosaurs together? And then step 3, highlight or note down any of those similarities. So where those comparisons have been made for the similarities, you need to highlight them, circle them, draw a line under them, pick them out, okay? And then step 4, you need to write down your answer in a full sentence. So one way that the body armour of an ankylosaurus and the body armour of a stegosaurus, one way that makes the body armour the same in an ankylosaurus and a stegosaurus is. Okay, so you're going to be using the keywords from the question to help you write your answer. So you've got stegosaurus, similar, ankylosaurus, body armour, and 2 ways. Okay, so you would be looking for 2 sentences, a reason in each, okay? So then there are some questions that ask you to look up the definitions of some of the words, and we've already gone through some of them, so you might just want to rewind the video back. And then there's question 6. And this question is asking you how you know whether this text is fiction or non-fiction, and then you need to explain your answer. So fiction is a story. It's something that's made up. It's not entirely true. The purpose of this story, and we know what a purpose is from our writing task, the reason why it's been written, the purpose of a piece of fiction, so literature, something to read that we enjoy reading, is for entertainment. It's something to entertain us with. So it might be something that you prefer to do over other things. So I prefer to read at bedtime rather than watch the TV because it helps me to relax. Or I really like reading on a cold rainy day with a cup of tea because it makes me feel cosy and snuggly, and it gives me something to do because I can't go outside. Okay. When you read those types of stories, you read it in an order. You read it from the start to the end because it's usually got chapters or page numbers that tell you the order that you need to read it in. And we usually read from page 1 until the end of the book, don't we? In your fiction stories, you tend to find illustrations. Now, when you read older books, so books for older children and adults and teenagers and young adults, there won't be as many illustrations. There won't be as many beautiful, colourful, bright drawings in the books, but it will still have. It still helps you to recognise whether it's fiction or not through those illustrations. Okay, some books might have them, but not all of them. Okay, so that's something that you tend to find more in a child's book. Okay, so up until about the age of 12 or 13, you might be reading stories with pictures in, and that's fine. You read whatever you want to read, but you can usually identify that it's fiction if there's a beautiful illustration. Okay, so that's something where somebody's taken the time to draw it out in the book. Okay. When you read your fiction book, there's usually a setting, so a place, isn't there? So when you read Little Red Riding Hood, you know it's set in the woods and at Grandma's house. You know that Horrid Henry is usually set in school because Henry's always horrid at school. You know that Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is set in a chocolate factory. Okay, so when you have a fiction book, there's usually a setting that you associate with that story or where that story is taking place. You then have your characters, so you usually have a main character, a couple of main characters, and then you usually have some other characters that help that main character on their journey and their story, okay? So, for example, Charlie out of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory would be the main character. You then have Grandpa who goes with him into the factory. You have Willy Wonka who runs the factory. There's all these different characters that get described with some beautiful writing about what they wear, how they speak, how they might walk and talk, okay, to paint this really vivid image of this person in your head. Now, when you read your fiction stories, you usually come across a problem somewhere, so something usually goes wrong. But there will usually be a solution at the end. So for example, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, the problem there was Goldilocks. She went into the bear's house and ate all their food, slept on their bed, she broke a chair, and that's the problem. She left the house in a mess, didn't she? But the bear's solution was to chase her out of the house, and they chased her off and they ran after her, didn't they, and told her to go away. So the solution there was them getting rid of Goldilocks, who was the problem, and then tidying up their house at the end. And then at the end, and then your fiction stories will typically have a beginning, so something that starts your story off. You have a middle, which is where your problem usually happens, and then your end, which is your solution, okay? Now, another example that shows this journey is a story mountain, okay? And you can map your story on your story mountain, and you can find them online if you wanted to look at one to help you. So moving on to non-fiction, and I'm going to talk very briefly about the non-fiction bullet points, and then you're going to decide after what I've said whether or not this text is fiction or not. Now, if you're clever enough, you might have remembered what I said the text was earlier, but you need to be able to explain why it is what it is, okay? So non-fiction is real information, it's facts, it's the truth. It's not a lie, it's the truth. And the purpose of a non-fiction text is to inform people, it's to educate them, it's to let them know and to give them new information that they didn't already have, okay? You can read it in any order. So thinking back to your non-chronological reports where you wrote about how to grow a seed and how to create a bug house, okay, and you gave information. You wrote lots of different sections, didn't you, on the order in which the seed might grow in, what seeds need to grow, how they live, what happens to them, seed dispersal. When you wrote about your bug houses, if you were with Miss Chafe, you would have written about the different types of bugs, the different types of houses, their habitat, okay? And you could write that and then read it in whatever order you want to, because you're looking for specific information in a non-fiction text. So it might be that you want to go straight to the area where you know your answer is, and then you can read around it afterwards. You will tend to have photographs, so these are real images and they're included in the text to help you. Now, if you're looking at a text that discusses an event or a creature or a person that wasn't around when you could take photos with a camera, there might be a sketch or a drawing of them, okay? But it won't be in colour, it'll perhaps be more like a diagram with labels or a caption, okay? So moving on, captions are something that we use to describe the photos and the images in a non-fiction text. So a lot of you had images and you all had a go when you did your non-fiction piece of writing at adding captions, didn't you? You all had a go. You spent a lesson on writing captions linked to some of the images from varmints, if you remember. We also had to go at writing labels next to our pictures to tell us about what was going on. So it might be if you've got a diagram or a picture that needs describing, you would add labels onto them just to make it clear to the reader what it is that you're describing. You will also have headings and subheadings. So a heading would be the one that tells you what the text is about. So you might have a heading that says growing a seed, and then you would have underneath planting your seed, and that would be your subheading, okay? So you have a main heading and then you would have subheadings that break the text down into chunks and allow the reader to find the information that they want to look for, okay? You might have charts or graphs, so that's non-fiction information, so that'll be facts and figures, so that'll be data that you will look at. So you might have a bar chart showing you the times of day that bears tend to come out to eat, for example, or it might show you the times of day where traffic is the busiest outside of school, okay? So information that is visual to support what has been written, okay? So based on what I've said, what type of text do you think today's comprehension text is? Is it a fiction text? Is it made up? Or is it a non-fiction text? Is it real facts? Okay, have a think. Your challenge for today is to identify and underline all the adjectives that you can find in the text. So even though the text is a certain type of text, they still use a lot of adjectives to describe the creatures in Armoured Dinosaurs. So your job is to identify those adjectives and pick them out for me. Use a highlighter or a colouring pencil to mark them for me if you're up to the challenge. Now, if you can't remember what an adjective is, I suggest you have a look on the internet what one is. And we've already done this before, so you should all be superstars at it. But if you aren't sure, go online and check out what one is, just as a little bit of a reminder. So reflecting on today's lesson, I just want you to think about one thing that you have learned. What have you learned? It could be a fact about one of the dinosaurs. It could be how to recognise the difference between fiction and non-fiction. It could be how to break down answering a question. Okay, so have a think and just reflect on the learning that you have the learning that you have done. Does that make sense? Your learning that has taken place today, just have a quick reflection and think very carefully about what you have learnt. If you want to write it down, that's fine. If you don't, that's also okay. And I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.